Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Key Team Talks. I know it's been a while. Welcome back. We're going to get better at this today. I would like to welcome everybody and welcome our two guests. We have Cesar Garcia with Ness Abstract and Eric Firestone, attorney at law. We would like to talk today and give buyers and agents an insight to what goes on behind the scenes once a contract gets fully signed. A lot of times agents and buyers thinks that their attorney or the title company isn't doing too much or not in communication with each other. A lot of times agents don't hear about issues until the 11th hour when we're looking to close, when rates are expiring or docs are expiring. Meanwhile, it turns out that title actually gets ordered pretty early on in the process, usually as soon as the buyer's attorney receives a fully executed contract. So Eric, is that true? You usually start ordering title once you get the contract signed back from the buyer's attorney, from the seller's attorney?
The moment we get back a fully executed contract from the seller's attorney, we immediately order title right away for that very reason, because we want to make sure that if there are any issues on title, we have plenty of time to address them with the title company and with the seller's attorney and with the lender's attorney if applicable.
And give us an idea, Cesar, on what does it normally take to get a full title report back to the buyer's attorney once they do order it here. And we'll talk about Queens County, 5 boroughs, and Long Island. What's the turnaround time frame?
Well, right now it's 2 weeks, and the issues we're having at the municipalities, we're not getting the COs on time, and that's just because of the whole pandemic thing. That those people are still not at full workforce yet. But pretty much, I would say 2 weeks, and then the rest comes in by drips.
Now, when you say municipalities, you're talking about villages, towns?
Correct. Villages, towns, and government, entities that supply information like certificate of occupancies, any violations, things of that nature.
And C of Os right now in this pandemic, I know New York City, 5 boroughs just opened up or told everybody to go back to work full in person as of like May 3rd. What is the turnaround time that you're seeing currently on C of Os?
Well, right now it's still too early to see how fast they're moving, but in the last has been another week. So I would say a total of 3 weeks it's taking them.
3 weeks. So basically within the first 30 days, roughly speaking, from a point of a fully executed contract, Eric will have the title report in and be able to see what the issues are. Eric, is that known as the Schedule B in the title report? It really outlines what's going on?
Is the Schedule B. The Schedule B has the list of exceptions to title. So we look through that to see an exception to title can be as simple as an existing mortgage. Or it can be an old mortgage. So we have to look through that and see, are there existing mortgages on the property? The seller's attorney has to look for that as well. We look to see, their judgments against the seller or against the purchaser. Is there a clean chain of title? A lot of things go into the Schedule B. If there are any sidewalk liens, that shows up on a Schedule B. So that it has to be looked at very carefully to make sure that we identify all the exceptions that could create an issue at closing, identify them, and work with the seller's attorney and the title company to make sure that they're cleared up in time.
So what we're hearing is that within the 30 days, we're going to really know how clean the title is, what kind of hiccups, perhaps we could be facing, and probably a good point in time for the agent to probably reach out to the buyer's attorney, be a little bit more proactive and say, hey, is there anything that I can assist you with, whatever side you're representing, whether you're representing the buyer or the seller, in trying to get these documents to show that we have clear title and therefore that we can close on time. Is there certain items that you're seeing in Schedule Bs pop up more nowadays than in the past? I know Cesar was talking about C of O issues. Are you seeing?
C of O just to be clear, C of O issues will not pop up in the Schedule B because certificate of occupancies don't go to title. That's for informational purposes only. That's more of a contract thing where the seller is representing that they have certificates of occupancy or all structures are legalized. That wouldn't show up on a Schedule B. That shows up on the certificate of occupancy search.
So we're just going to make sure all agents know that out there is that C of Os is not a title issue and therefore is not going to prevent clear title being conveyed.
but it could prevent marketable title and it can prevent you from closing. It could be just as damaging as anything else. Now, when it comes to certain things, like if there's a judgment from the building department against the seller, that would be a Schedule B issue because it's a judgment against the seller. But if it's just open permit, or lack of a certificate of occupancy for a garage or a deck, something along those lines, that you won't find that on a Schedule B. That will be on the certificate of occupancy search. Right. Those searches are taking longer than the actual Schedule B, the abstract of title. So the problem that we're facing on an attorney level is, for instance, in New York City, we're getting C of O searches relatively quickly, housing and building searches for violations. The problem is Nassau and Suffolk, really, and they're taking longer than usual. And to be honest with you, even before the pandemic, certain towns in Suffolk County, Babylon, Lindenhurst, those places took 7 or 8 weeks even before the pandemic. Now you find all the places out in Nassau and Suffolk are having those issues, and hopefully it'll start to go back to normal soon. But until it does, we have to act. We have to basically act in accordance with expectations.
And I'm sure, and I hear it on our side here too, is that sidewalk liens are definitely popping up a lot more nowadays than in the past.
Queens County especially.
And remember, get that permit and then call 311 for inspections. People always do it the opposite way.
So repeat that, Cesar, because this is good information for agents to tell their homeowners on how to address this, because if we're getting back to Schedule B within the 30 days, if this is a mortgage transaction, we'll probably have another 30, 60 days to close. What's the proper way to go about this to address?
They have to get the permit. They have to get a permit first, then get it fixed, and then call 311, because they won't come out for a final inspection unless there's a permit. So, you calling them to tell them it was fixed and no permit, they won't even consider that a phone call.
So you call like a cement masonry, you tell them your issue, they'll go pull the permit.
Correct.
Do the work, then call 311 to tell them that it's all been taken care of.
Correct. And they'll investigate to make sure there was a permit pulled first, and then they'll come out. If there's no permit, they'll never come out.
And you know what? I will tell you, to all agents out there, especially that do business in Queens and residential in Queens with houses, it would be really helpful if you found and had a cement person or somebody that is adept at pulling permits, fixing sidewalks, and getting it done. Just as important as having a home inspector in your Rolodex, or a credit repair person. To have someone like that in your Rolodex in Queens County would be extremely valuable and helpful to your seller.
Mm-hmm. And everybody should make note of that. It's always good to have a full list of vendors. A lot of times we talk about attorneys, title, mortgage, home inspectors, but we don't go a little bit more in depth. And as we're starting to see some issues arise, as Eric mentioned, that we definitely need to have a masonry in our Rolodex. What other issues are you seeing or things that are popping up in Schedule Bs? I know we've been dealing with a lot of estates, and getting paperwork and trusts and things like that. Eric, do you want to talk about that for a moment?
Yeah. So with estates, what the title companies want to see is they want to see that if there's an estate, that there are either letters testamentary if there's a will, or letters of administration if there was no will, and they want to see that, and they want to see that that everything has been taken care of, so that the person that's signing on the behalf of the estate is legally doing so. And that needs to be, the title company needs to see that in order to ensure title for the new buyer. So that's something that needs to be asked in advance. And to get that information up front before the title comes in is valuable, because you don't want to wait the 30 days, whether it be for estate paperwork or even for the sidewalk lien, for those type of things. The more information you have up front, the quicker we can start working on it. Sometimes these things pop up as a surprise, and you're already 30 days in the hole. So you really want to try to get ahead of it if you can.
And that also brings up a good point, which just dawned on me, is that because of the pandemic, I've been seeing personally a lot more trust being formed, or a lot more trust, even or which led to estates, but a lot more people just trying to do some planning in advance of transferring property and putting them into a trust. Eric, you want to talk about, the chain and what is needed to provide ownership when doing that preparation?
Yeah, it's really not actually the trust is not that complicated. If you find out as a seller's attorney that your seller is selling out of a trust, what you really want to do is just make sure, and as an agent, you can ask this as well, just to have them have the trust documents ready, and to make sure that the trust is available. You get it from the estate attorney, or maybe maybe the seller has a copy of it, and then it's just as simple as sending over the trust over to the title company once the title's in, having them review the trust, make sure is good, and then the title company is going to issue affidavits to the trustees saying that the trust is still in full force and effect, and all the necessary things that the title company needs, and that's just stuff that can be signed at closing. So with a trust, it's really not that complicated. It's just a matter of getting the trust over to the title company and having them approve it. It gets a little more complicated with estates in terms of what needs to be done with the courts. If things need to be done with the courts, that's always not the case. There are other ways of going around with estates, of going to surrogates court, which is time consuming and can really delay a closing. There are things like Cesar can talk about with instead of going to court, there are certain documents that the title company will accept, like heirship affidavits, things that will allow a seller to satisfy the title company in terms of who's selling without having to go to court and getting these letters of administration, the letters testamentary. So there's more than one way to attack it. It just has to be attacked early.
And Cesar, you want to talk about that, or talk about also some issues that you're seeing on the title side that either someone like Eric is asking for, or things that you need in order to make sure that there's clear and marketable titles so that we can close on time, that agents and buyers should be aware of. I know as an agent, right, I always tell our team and our agents here, use sources like Property Shark and Geodata. Familiarize yourself with the type of homes that things look out of the ordinary, whether it's an extension, whether people mention anything about an estate or a trust, to start doing some homework, making sure parties like Eric and Cesar are informed way in advance, so that we have plenty of time to prepare and know what kind of obstacles that we're going to be facing throughout the transaction. So Cesar, talk for a minute what you're seeing on the title end that is either delaying you in providing clear and marketable title, or things that agents can do to help make your life a little bit easier.
Yeah, sure. A lot of what Eric said is something that we definitely need. I feel like agents should definitely ask these questions when you're at that listing appointment. There's a lot of telltale signs when you start asking them questions. Getting those letters of testamentary ahead of time are great, because some of them expire, and people don't realize that some of them expire and you have to get new ones. The 30 days could become a nightmare, where those 30 days now become 60 or 90 because you're waiting on surrogates court to provide new ones. So things like that are things that you would need to ask in ahead of time. When you go out on the listing appointment, you start, doing the previews of the house. Look outside as soon as you get to the house, is the sidewalk cracked? Things like that are signs that, they may have gotten a violation. Did they get, solar panels? Did they get a permit for it? Those are things you need to start asking that are telltale signs for an agent. Another thing that I see coming across as a problem is spelling of the owners or buyer's name is becoming a big issue. We're living in a multicultural world now, and a lot of people spell their names very differently, and that could delay you. Now because we search, and then we have to cancel the search and order a whole new search because the names were wrong. So things like that could delay the process. I've seen attorneys have to fix the names in the contract as well because the names are wrong. So things like that. I think I would suggest agents look out for, pay attention to, ask the questions. And honestly, I know it might take longer because I know we get excited to try to get that listing, but I think it'll make you look that more of a professional, being that you have all that in knowledge and experience that you can make an owner feel comfortable that, hey, I know how to get things done. That's the reason why I get these questions. So there's no delays at closing.
And that's a big point, is that you always want to look professional, do your job, surround yourself with a team of professionals. I know that I always preach that using a whole team in place of professionals. Prime example, selling my parents' home, had Eric on one side, another attorney that we know on another side, Cesar and Ness Abstract on the title side, the lender and that we know as well involved. We end up closing a large transaction in about a 6-week time frame from contract to close in the middle of a pandemic, which is unheard of. So using, a trusted team of professionals, people who pick up their cell phones, who really know what they're doing, know how to navigate all the ins and outs of a real estate transaction is very, very important in this market. We have very limited inventory. We have a high demand, low interest rates. I'm sure, Cesar, you're probably still seeing a little bit of refinance activity going on, probably more purchases than refinances going on right now. And same with you, Eric, probably more purchases as well.
I see a lot more purchases because the refinances, I'm still dealing with refinances from that applications that were taken out in September. Banks are 7-8 months to get things done, whether it's on the bank side or if you have to do a SEMA and you're asking for the documents from the prior bank. It's taking, I literally am closing files that were opened up in September. Purchases are a lot better. Certainly things are moving faster. I think the banks are putting more of their resources towards purchases than they are towards refinances. So, I'm seeing, even though there are delays even on the purchase end, because banks are slow, they're still working remotely. It's the volume, because of the increased amount of refinances and because of the increased amount of purchases, has caused the banks to slow down. They're prioritizing things based upon when things are closing, so it's creating some issues. But I anticipate that to ease a bit as people get back to work and get back into the offices, and I expect it to go back towards a normal time frame for a transaction.
And speaking of where do you, Eric, where do you see, and I'm going to then give this question to Cesar, where do you see the market going, for the remainder of the year into next year? As Eric did mention, we're hearing that here in the 5 boroughs, things are going to open up to full capacity come July, if that's correct. And then, schools should be hopefully 5 days a week come September. So one would think that this would alleviate some of the backlog. Interest rates should still be low, so that should still keep the market relatively healthy moving into, the rest of the summer, fall, and winter months. What do you think, Eric?
Well, I don't think interest rates are going to skyrocket anytime soon. I think that the government will keep interest rates relatively low because I think that's what's keeping the market healthy. I think if it went back up to above 5%, 6%, like they were like in the late 90s, early 2000s, I think that it would severely damage the market, and I think the government knows that. So while interest rates may live between 3, they may go up above 4 for a little while, 4.5 perhaps, and there'll be panic in the market. But remember, that's still historically low. So I think rates will live in that relatively low area for the foreseeable future. And I really don't see anything much changing in terms of the volume. I think that for the rest of the year, I think you're going to see a lot of activity. I still think you're going to see probably high buyer demand, especially for houses, especially in the more suburban areas. And I think you're going to see people that live here, that have had houses for many years, that want to get out of New York and want to get down to the South. I'm seeing a ton of that, and I don't expect to see that change going forward for the rest of the year and into 2022. I think we're going to be pretty busy.
And that's what a good point earlier is that people forget, we got spoiled for a very long time with rates below 3. For the most part, 3 to 4, 3 to 4.5, has been relatively the norm for probably 5, 6, 7 plus years now. I remember selling a house, one of my college buddies, and even my sister bought a house in 2008. Interest rates were 6.5%, and that's not that long ago. So we just got spoiled below 3 for quite some time. So 3 to 4, 3 to 4.5, relatively good. My parents always tell me the stories in the early 80s. It was 17, 18%, and Eric's shaking his head, so he knows exactly what we're talking about.
They were happy to get 17%.
I'm sorry?
Right. And they were happy to get 17%.
Right. Yes, the houses were much cheaper back then, but all relative. Cesar, tell us what your predictions are for the remainder of the year into next.
Yeah, I'm in line with Eric right here. I predicted maybe like 2 months ago that the interest rate will dip back again, just because I don't see the movement of some businesses and some things coming back into the city as fast as they wanted to. So they dipped back yesterday. They went down below 3 for a little bit. So if you can lock in, I see a lot of the old refis coming back into close because the interest rates went down a little bit. I feel that as long as people go back to work and don't, and ease off on the mask, because I know Cuomo just said you can take off your mask now for everybody that's vaccinated. If people just take care of themselves and just, ease off of not, contaminating nobody, I feel that, we should be good in the clear, because if we all go back to getting sick, it'll really derail us as to where we're heading right now.
Yeah, hopefully everybody, as Cuomo lifted the mask mandate come, I believe tomorrow, for those that are vaccinated, hopefully that we don't see a setback,
Exactly.
and the city starts and the 5 boroughs start to open up more, schools go back to in person, people go back to the offices and back to working. This is all going to create a healthy environment for the housing market, people's confidence, people's savings, and their ability to go ahead and buy or sell homes. I think Eric is right. We're still seeing a big push from New York to states down south, for those who are looking to retire or those who are empty nesters. Many are leaving New York and going elsewhere, and we're always here to help. That's why we have our whole relocation business, whether we're moving across town, across the country, or around the world. We make moving easy is our Key Team trademark slogan. So keep that in mind. We can help you here in New York or wherever you're moving to. Keep us in mind. I want to thank Eric and Cesar today for their time. We're going to publish both of their contact information that you should definitely reach out to them with any questions. What buyers forget is that buyers do have the ability to pick and choose which title company they're using. You don't always have to listen to your attorney. No offense, Eric, but buyers do have a choice. And Eric and Cesar work very closely together. Like I said before, by using a team of professionals that get along and work very well together is going to make your transaction move a lot more smoothly and quickly, especially when there's this amount of communication and this amount of trust. So I definitely encourage all agents and all buyers, definitely reach out to Eric and Cesar for all your attorney and title needs. And as always, we're the Key Team here at Keller Williams Realty Landmark for your real estate needs, whether local, national, or international. We're here to help. And I want to thank everybody for their time. And we'll see you on the next episode of Key Team Talks. Thanks, guys.
Thank you very much.
Take care.
Bye.